Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Sean O'Sullivan, the founder and managing partner of SOSV, VC, and Global Accelerators. Also, Jeff Hoffman, global entrepreneur, CEO, speaker, author, and film producer.
All of the above. Also took a foray into entrepreneurship and media. We've done music, films, television. We are in fact filming a new show right now. I'll just end with this, that I've been away filming all week. It's a new show called Going Public. It's like Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, and except that the viewers of the show get to invest, not the sharks. So we're trying to democratize investing and make it available to everybody out there, as well as we're focusing on underrepresented founders so that we get a lot more diverse set of companies taking companies public, and we'll be taking some of them public on the NASDAQ. Last thing, I'm also the chairman of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, where we work with entrepreneurs in about 190 countries. And that's what I spend probably most of my time on. But I'm thrilled to be here with you and Sean. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. And that's a fantastic organization. Remind us, Jeff, can we find that show? What's the timing as well?
So we're filming now, but I am prepping these companies to go public over the next couple of months. So we'll be filming over a couple of months, and then it'll probably be late summer before we air, and we are intentionally streaming it everywhere so that you can literally invest as you're watching it on Roku and on Apple and on Facebook and on all those places, Amazon. But one we're most excited about is entrepreneur.com, an entrepreneur magazine. They have about 20 million viewers on their content, and we're partnered with them since they're right up our alley. So we'll be streaming there as well.
Wonderful. I can't wait. I think that's so innovative and really special. Okay, Sean knows something about investing and going public. So Sean, tell folks who somehow don't know who you are about yourself.
Oh, I'm sure most people don't know who I am, but thank you for blowing the smoke up my dress or whatever it's called. I am an investor these days. I used to be an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, like Jeff. My first company went public. It was a company called MapInfo. You type an address into a computer and you see a street map. That was the first time that was done. A couple 100 million people have use the technology under MapInfo, and then of course now it's popular on phones and other types of things. It became a couple 100 million revenue company, and I was the one of the four founders, the president and chairman of that company for its first years. And then I also did some other startups. I coined the term cloud computing. That's my other sort of claim to fame. And in a company that actually ended up dying. So I've gone through the success and failure pieces of the entrepreneurial equation. And then I now run SOSV, which is an active investor in life sciences and hardware. We're the world's most active in those two areas. We invest about around $80 million a year in new startups, brand new startups, about 130 startups last year. And we have about 1,000 companies in our portfolio. So that's a little bit about us. We are very active in life sciences and hardware, and happy to be in the game.
Well, thank you for joining us, Sean. And tell us, before we switch back, we're going to have a bunch of questions coming out online, but I know you have invested in companies that have been again, helping the fight against this pandemic.
Right.
One of those was considered for the awards today. So talk to us about how you've seen things evolve and how your investments have changed.
Changed since what? Since the pandemic? As part of the pandemic?
Yeah.
Well, as part of the pandemic, we actually had a call for applications. We funded, did an immediate funding of maybe 8 new startups specifically, but we also funded 40 of our existing startups that were already in the, say, medical diagnostics or testing services or robotics or scaling or we had a wide array of companies that we backed in the pandemic, including antibody therapeutics, and viral things to bring down viral loads, cytokine response, pharmaceuticals, and several of those grew to one of them grew to around 400 million in revenue last year from 10 million in revenue the year before, a company based in the New York region, actually. And several of them grew to, tens of millions in revenue. And actually, it's not about the revenue so much as it about the fact that the world needed them and they were in the right place at the right time with the right technology.
Right. Well, thanks for that update. That's really impactful. So, Jeff, you've been, virtually around the world. You've been going around the world for a long time, as a leader of entrepreneurship and innovation. How have you seen things, change over the past year? How does it look from your perspective?
So the pandemic was, clearly there was all the negative things that happened that we all know about. But the pandemic threw the world into chaos and disruption. And chaos and disruption are the alarm clocks of entrepreneurs, right? That's when you wake up, and that's when you should be the most excited and energetic. What I mean by that, again, not being disrespectful to the bad part, I'm saying that all of a sudden, everything was in chaos. None of us knew how to work from home because there weren't very many tools. None of us knew how to teach from home and go to school from home because there weren't very many tools. None of us knew how to get medicine and interact with doctors when we couldn't go to the hospital because there weren't very many tools. So, the consistent message was time to innovate, and time, the chaos, disruption levels a playing field. And all of a sudden, everybody's on the same field. But what was different this time about this pandemic was there's never been really a war in human history that the entire globe was fighting the same enemy. Every country on the planet was fighting the same enemy, COVID. So you had a lot of commonality where everybody in every geography needed the same solutions, the same help for the same problems. So it was really an unprecedented moment for really innovative entrepreneurs to say, what new products and services does the world need that it didn't need yesterday? And how can I, jump out there and start providing those? And we just saw some amazing, innovators and entrepreneurs really jump to the forefront during this time.
Someone says, don't you think that this pandemic will last forever? And I certainly don't, but I'd like to hear your perspectives. You guys are sort of seeing things from a different vantage point.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I do think that the pandemic is going to have a long tail on it, but for the most part, for most of us, you take your vaccine and this thing is basically done. That's not to say that it's totally done, because there are many countries throughout the world where it will be difficult to even travel to, and you'll have to be quarantining. It does change how we do business going forward. I normally travel to China, 8 times a year or so, but I'm not going to go to China if they make me stay in quarantine for 3 weeks, and then I leave there and go to Taipei and they make me stay for 2 weeks, so that, unfortunately, I don't see China lightening up for a while. They don't seem to be, I don't think that'll happen in 2021 because they are too exposed to this, blowing up in their own population. So I do think it'll be a while that there will be some leftover bits of it. And I do think that long-term COVID is a real challenge for all of us, as there are many other implications. I even had a partner at SOSV who had COVID, went to the hospital, did not, was in intensive care, did not get intubated or anything, but he has a lifelong affliction now with COVID. He can walk 100 meters and that's about it. He never had a problem going up a flight of stairs. Now he can't go more than a flight of stairs. He works out of his bed. And so there's a lot of people that have long-term COVID, maybe not as severe as that, but it is going to be very, very difficult for, but with those difficulties come some greater understanding. I think we'll understand the immune system a lot better, and then we will understand how to treat these pandemics infinitely faster. We have several shots on goal on that. I think the whole medical industry is going to be rejuvenated by some of the unfortunate learnings of what we've just been through.
Yeah. And in fact, one of the silver linings, if there could be some, is all the interest and all the applications to med schools and epidemiology schools. And so, the amount of energy going there and smart people, I think will benefit us down the road. Did you want to add anything, Jeff?
Yeah, I totally agree with Sean that this isn't going to last forever. The effects certainly will, not just health effects, but we'll never work the same way again. We'll never travel. I do the national news. I wind up doing the travel reporting all the time. So I've been studying the industry heavily since I came out of it. And a lot of companies will hold internal meetings on technology like Zoom. They never had this option and they never used this, so they didn't know it existed. And now a lot of meetings that don't involve a customer face-to-face meeting, so we won't travel the same. More and more CEOs are telling me that they're going to go 2 days in the office and 3 days at home. They would have never considered that before. So telemedicine got a boost that was going so slowly before. So we'll never be the same, but we never are anyway, right? Something always comes along and changes it. But in terms of the pandemic moving on, very dependent on not only what country you live in, but what state and city. I'm in Florida. There are days in Florida that you might already think that the pandemic's over. People aren't even wearing masks. Restaurants are open. They're full. I was in Vegas recently, and the streets are back to wall, and the casinos are open. And I've got to be honest with you, people aren't really wearing their masks, and no one really cares. That is a total state-by-state difference. There are states you go to where everybody's really conscious, everybody's wearing a mask, but what you're seeing more and more of are people are getting out, people are getting vaccinated, and people are starting to move again. So we're already on a different part of this pandemic, but our lives will never be the same again.
That's a fair point. So someone had a question about voice technology. I know you guys see everything. So are voice technologies, are they the next big innovation? And what are your views on investing in those or in that sector?
John, you want to go first?
We use voice technologies for occasional applications. I do think, it is being built into more and more devices. Obviously, voice technologies are awesome. I use them, continuously myself. So I think it's a great advance. But is it? I don't think it's the next big innovation. I think it was the last big innovation, and I think it's a very good innovation, and it will run for a while. So I think it's cool. It's very cool.
Yeah, just agreed. It is a big innovation. It's just not the next one. It's been around for a long time, but it's now ramping up. But just a note, I was speaking at Microsoft's big event, and obviously one of the speakers was Satya, the Microsoft CEO, and in chatting with him, one of the things that struck me most was he said, apps will be dead in a couple of years. Your phone is filled with apps and you won't need them anymore. Because why do I have apps? Why do I have the American Airlines? I'm looking at my phone, United, Delta, the Priceline app. Why are all these apps on my phone? Because I'm trying to plan travel and I need information. And the reason you won't have apps anymore is all they do is access information that I want to look at. So if I can say to my phone, I need to go to Vegas, what's the best way for me to get there? My phone already knows everything about how I like to travel, who are my favorite airlines. It looks at the price. I won't need the apps anymore. I'll just, the same way we're already talking to Alexa, Siri, whatever you use. I think he's right. I think voice eliminates the need for apps when you just ask a question and get the info, because all the apps were a way to get to some info you were trying to get anyway. It's significant. It's just not new.
Right. That's a really good point. Um, Here's a question about New Jersey. So both of you can speak to this. Someone asks, as an investor, what types of industry clusters should New Jersey target given its set of resources, its rich set of resources and legacy?
Well, I mean, obviously New Jersey has spectacular depth in the areas of life sciences and pharmaceuticals and biologics and all sorts of other areas. But New Jersey goes far beyond that into deep depth in electrical engineering. I mean, there's some wonderful research centers here in Rutgers and food technology in Princeton and self-driving cars and all sorts of energy innovations. Now the Erdinger Center at Princeton is actually helping shape the Biden administration's response to how they deal with the opportunities for a decarbonization of our economy. So I do think that there's tremendous chances for starting up a huge number of companies in these deep tech areas.
Great, thank you. Here's a question you can both answer. How do successful entrepreneurs like yourselves build company culture in an environment where you don't get to see team members in person, particularly this past year, but going forward as well? There's a new reality.
Yeah, it's culture is unbelievably, I don't even have the right adjectives or whatever for how important culture is. You never hire resumes, you hire cultural fit. And cultural fit is around values. And the best companies wear their values, wear their culture right on their sleeve so everybody knows it and everybody understands it. It is definitely more difficult to build and maintain culture in an online environment, but it's even more difficult than that if you don't even try, which a lot of companies are shrugging and saying, how am I supposed to do this now? It's so hard, no one's in the office. The most innovative companies that have that culture of innovation are literally, this is what I did. I asked my whole team, guys, it's really hard, we're not in the office anymore. Who has some ideas on how to maintain our culture? Let's talk about what our culture is, and then let's talk about things we can do to maintain it. So an example was one of my team was telling me about the sort of part of our culture is a very family-oriented environment, respectful of people having a 360-degree life, not just being a quote employee. So when we were having that discussion, one of the ideas we came up with was, and all of these are optional, just like a lot of activities are, but one day we had an optional pet day. If you have a pet, bring them on Zoom. And we voted. And we voted for cutest pet, ugliest pet, right? Funniest pet. We just had a day where everybody was talking about their pets because it added a level of humanity back into a conversation. If you didn't have a pet or you didn't want to be part of it, you didn't have to. But it turns out everyone in the whole company stayed, and either they had a pet or they wanted to comment on them. And it just brought a little bit, like I said, of the human element back to a Zoom call that we didn't have before. We had another day where people's kids were allowed to come on and ask them questions. So all the kids were seeing each other and chatting and asking us questions that no adult would have ever thought of, that was really taxing us. And it was fun, and it reflected our culture that we actually know that you have a life outside of our company, and we want to design our company around your life, not make you completely re-engineer your life to keep your job. So that was just an example. It's hard, but you got to try.
Great example. Sean?
Yeah, I would just, that was a great example. Just to add on just a little bit, we've had the experience of needing to do a lot more frequent sort of town halls, where we have, 30 or 40 people speaking in an hour-long period, just really, really quick, couple-minute updates. And that's been great to also have sort of Q&As and interactivity. I think one of the things that you often find in Zoom is that there is a couple of people that speak and sort of dominate, and actually, in a real world environment, you always have, more back chatter as everyone leaves the room and everyone sort of discusses things and there's more involvement. Whereas if people aren't being, brought out and brought to the surface, that's a very stifling thing in terms of what, it feels your impact could be on the company, for you never even to have the chance to chat amongst the people, as in the room or in the cafeteria or anything, or have your voice heard or your ideas being surfaced. So we just make an extra special effort to always engage, even if it's an 8-person meeting, a 4-person meeting, just make sure everybody on the call is raising points. And just, that's a job of a moderator to make sure that, or the leader of the team, to make sure that everyone gets their voice heard. And it's just amazing that people don't sort of speak up sometimes, because you hear the person who's been sitting there quietly for 30 minutes say the most insightful thing, the best thing that's been said in the whole call, and they wouldn't have said it except for the fact that you asked them specifically, hey, do you have any comments, Julie, or whatever else, so it's important to recognize it is a very different culture and to make accommodations for it. But I am looking forward to getting more and more back to the office as much as possible.
Great. There's a question about investing, about themes, and I think different VCs are different, and whether they focus in different areas. But can you comment on sort of how you view the companies you invest in? Are there sectors you like, or do you change with the times and what's hot and what's not?
When you mention sectors, a big piece for us is, can we add any value besides writing a check? And so sectors matter in the sense that there's one of two things. Either it's a hot sector, we want to be involved, or it's one that we know that we can really add value to, so we can multiply our own investment by contributing something. Now, the best case is when those two things happen at the same time. It's a hot sector and we know the sector. But we'd prefer to look at deals where we bring something. I think those two things are what we are trying to converge on any different investment opportunity.
Yeah, I double down on what Jeff was saying. I mean, not only do you know what is real and what's not real when you have a deep understanding of a sector, like we do in life sciences, medical devices, all that sort of area, and in hardware, robotics and all those areas. Those are the areas that we would concentrate, not only because we know what's good and what's been done before, and we can add a lot of value to the designs of those companies and their user experience and everything, but also we know all the other investors that are interested in that. And a lot of the times with an accelerator, it's about syndicating that deal to the Series A or the Series B investor down the line, and knowing that they are already interested in this topic, and that you can have that easy conversation, and that it's easy to have that make that referral, and that people will be waiting with bated breath to see what the next thing is that you've got to introduce them to, like versus just trying to make a cold call. It helps to have the gatekeepers of an industry, but you can't keep gates on all the different industries. You really have to focus.
But a quick note, totally agree. And a quick note to entrepreneurs: quit pitching stuff to investors who weren't likely to invest anyway. Do more homework. I'm amazed at the number of pitches that I see that I think, did you actually think that person was interested in that topic? Because too many entrepreneurs' definition of investor is anybody whose business card says investor. And I always say, is that how you segment your customers? If they're a human being, they're therefore a potential customer? No. You segment the hell out of customers. You should be doing that with investors. You should be doing a lot more homework and saying, Sean's going to love this one. And that's not what I see. I see people just pitching. They're disappointed with the results. And I'm shaking my head saying, Sean was never going to love that one. It was a travel deal. He likes life sciences. I have no idea. And vice versa. You're pitching me a life sciences and not a consumer deal. I'm probably saying, why aren't you pitching this to Sean? Because that's his space, not mine.
Fair enough. So getting specific on two industries that have been hot, AI and cybersecurity. There's a question about, how do you see cybersecurity playing in the AI space?
Well, I guess I'll make a punt on that one. to Jeff's point, really. But no, I mean, listen, like it is true that cybersecurity and AI are married together. They should be married together. You should have some much better tools. As a developer, as an engineer, I did do a lot of software work in the past, and network work. But listen, it's beyond my. I know that should be a hot area, but I would have to pass on being able to comment intelligently on it.
So I will jump in on that because, and full disclosure, I'm already in an AI company that's in that space. The biggest piece of that is one of the most valuable things that AI does, especially for the number of people that everybody nods and acts like they know what artificial intelligence is, and it's so broad and so vague. It's like the number of people that say, oh yeah, the blockchain. And then when they get home, they go, what is the blockchain again? AI does that too. AI is a broad term that people like to throw around. And one of the roots of AI for real is just pattern recognition, looking at enough data to learn from it, right? And so pattern recognition leads to prediction. And so one of the best parts of AI in security and cybersecurity is predictive, is trying to figure out, based on a lot of data, what might be the next attack, or who might even be the next bad actor. What should we anticipate, and how do we prepare for it before it happens? Cybersecurity is frequently a reactive business. Something bad happens and we're trying to recover from it. The future of it, based on AI, which is looking at tons of data to generate predictive models, is saying, let's guess what's coming next and let's fend it off before it ever gets here.
Fair enough. So here's a question that gets into sort of some of the things that companies need to start thinking about. Now that employees are working from home, how does that impact legal, insurance, cybersecurity issues? Do policies need to be rewritten?
I think, the policies are always being rewritten due to whatever is the most urgent thing on the topic on the table today. And if it's not considered the most urgent thing, no one's going to get around to rewriting those policies. So what is the thing that is critical today? Right now there's things around COVID, there's things around exposure to, to the virus, or, other issues of, equity, diversity, inclusion. Those are issues that are hot. Other than that, I don't know, and now investing in the environmental, climate change, climate tech, seems to be things that people are really paying attention to. Other than that, I don't think anyone's going to be rewriting any policies. But if you're in those areas, you can look to all companies saying, yeah, we have a role to play in trying to be active in the leading hot buttons of the society today.
Okay. So here's a question about ecosystem. What are your thoughts on how a proper innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem needs to be enabled? Right now, there are too many silos, support organizations, incubators, accelerators, capital firms, VCs, et cetera.
Well, I mean, I think, what you're looking at here is community, right? So every thriving enterprise is built a good community around it. And how do we have, how do we enable a thriving community? Well, you have to have, in general, if you're talking about highly scalable businesses, what you're talking about is tech, so you're talking about the tech, universities and the supply of workers in those areas. You need to have, VC, seed capital, Series A capital, Series B capital, accessible to folks. I mean, you could have a great accelerator, by itself, or a great incubator or co-working spaces, or, by themselves. They will die those companies will die on the vine unless there's another dollar that's going to follow in on it afterwards. So you have to be building everything all at the same time, in order for these things to scale and to work. And normally what seeds that is, having a body of, engineers and scientists that are in the community already. And New Jersey is blessed to have a large quantity of, engineers and scientists. Not so much on the finance side. There's fewer sort of seed, investors, but there's lots of angel investors in this area. But what would be helpful is probably a deeper network of seed investors and Series A investors for the community in New Jersey to thrive.
I know we're over time. I just want to thank both of you. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.